Hello and welcome to the 10 sub special. I'm so glad to have reached double digits. I never expect to do that, and I figured what better way to celebrate this than for what ended up, I think, getting me on my 10th sub is to talk about this custom party for Slice and Dice. If you're unfamiliar with Slice and Dice, it's a roguelite game where you get different characters and they upgrade, and you get different items, and your goal is to beat 20 levels through different difficulties. Now, as you can see, I've been able to beat it on unfair. I haven't been able to beat it on brutal, but I haven't given it too many attempts. But brutal is very brutal. Now, to get into this, uh, let's just talk about like the starting characters for the custom party mode. There's several other modes. I don't have all of them unlocked, but so when you were looking at these, you need to think about consistency and what they bring. So let's take for example mage. Mage, there's a 2 out of 3 chance that you're going to get something. They don't have a lot of HP, and they bring flair, right? But if we go to, medic, they're obviously going to have a spell as well. And you're always going to get out something unless you get unlucky with the one, so with the more HP. But if we think more about the scoundrel, sure, they have a lot of HP, but there's a 2 in 3 chance that you will get nothing. And even with 2 rerolls, getting NX isn't uncommon. Now, you don't have to live with these characters forever because, as I said, they'll upgrade, but it's kind of random which 2 characters you'll get to pick from out of 5. So this kind of compounds. So you want your starting characters to be good. So let's start with blue, what I'm the most familiar with, and I'll kind of talk about, some of the other ideas of what you might want. So cultists is going to give you a decent burst in mana. The reason why I ended up not taking them for my Smurf team is because cut is just not that great of a spell. You're dealing 3, and you don't have a lot of hit points to begin with. Like, so if we did all like that's, it would go to 1, they'd be at 2, they'd be at 1. So it's not particularly great there. There we go. These damaging, it's a lot of mana all at once. I could probably try it. And they do have a self heal, which is kind of nice. The single use, it's usually enough because the rounds are fairly fast and fairly bursty in an all blue team. But if you mix it with anything else, I just don't particularly enjoy them. Although I'm starting to enjoy these pain sides because you just get a lot of value all at once, and with fast paced combat, they're not that bad. So the initiate here is deceptively good because if you have a high mana team, gather becomes a fantastic tool because if you roll 2 blank sides, you can spend 2 to gain 4. So you're getting a net of 2, which is kind of nice. It's just kind of like a good failsafe for if you want mana or anything else. Growth is a trap, in my opinion, as you're only going to get to use it once, maybe twice. So unless you have the student, which we'll talk about later, where you can use it multiple times in a turn, it's just a 1 mana side. And cantrip, of course, is always nice. It's a bonus. And they're fairly consistent. Student here, you're getting a 50-50. You're getting something out of the mana you do gain. Because you're getting a shield. And so that's kind of like gating 1 mana because burst is 2 mana, 2 shields. Or damage. But if we're going for a shield, it can help keep a party member alive to sustain their health. It's really great against, like thorns or spikes for if you have any melee damage. It's really helpful there. Slice is also a fantastic spell because you can hit the backline with it. It hits all enemies. And the utility that just brings is amazing. Right, 3 mana, you get to kill all the illusions if there's any. 6 mana, you get to kill anything with 2 HP or less. And then if you get to 3, that kills the rats. So if you have like rat, goblin, rat, 9 mana just means you win the round. And then this is pretty great. It's obviously a 1 in 6 chance if you get it or not. But anything with growth means it grows that turn. So 1, and then you reuse it, and then you get 2, and then you can reuse it again if you have a second student that rolled it, and then it gets to 3. So even if you don't win that round, You've got a lot of tempo on one of your die sets, and you're still getting good mana because this is effectively a second 2 mana side or 1 mana side or whatever you're doing. So it's a way of building some form of consistency because if we take our mage here, I know there's a 1 in 3 chance they get that, and then you get to duplicate it. So you only have to hit these odds once, and with 2 mages, that really helps. No, Flare is a fantastic spell. Now, unfortunately, wolves have 6 hit points, but being able to burst 5 damage is very important. If you're into something like a bandit, if you can get them down low, you can hit 5, and then if the bandit is next to that enemy, they'll just flee. They're kind of like a goblin, but you have to do an overkill, which makes mage pretty fantastic. Now, all of these characters are kind of low in hit points, but if you go for a high tempo, high risk, high reward party, the hit points doesn't really matter. You just kill everything. So that's kind of why all blue is viable, but we don't necessarily need to talk about monochromatic stuff. So let's talk about all red. So all red runs are difficult because you don't produce the mana you need and you don't have a lot of damaging sides, but they do bring some very unique things in your party. So men, for the self-damage side, so let's take cultist for a second. We could deal 4 damage to ourselves, we'd be down at 1. And then we can spend 1 mana to set their HP at 3. So that's effectively healing them for 2, and you're getting 3 mana. That's a lot of mana to be gaining, especially fairly early on. And because it's a spell, it's always available. You don't have to roll it, which makes your team more reliable. Anything with 3 pips or these little dashes is really helpful because you don't get that often, and just being able to heal out of stuff, out of lethality, is kind of nice. Now, obviously, turn 1, these heals aren't great unless you have an item that helps with that. That's fairly unreliable, so you don't want to necessarily consider items when looking at characters. So that's the healer. They're pretty decent. I really do like the 2 vitality. If you were to do an all red run, you might want to go with all acolytes. Not because of their spell, not because of the heal cleave, but because it's based on your current HP versus the enemies. And this can increase your max HP, so you can just get everything super big, and it's just kind of nice. It's like a healing and a shield, because shields go away unless you have an item. This is quote unquote forever, at least in terms of the combat. So you can heal it back up, even though they might start at 5 HP. They can be at 7. You can heal them back up to 7. Should combats go long and you have like a longer, grindier comp, Acolyte is fairly reliable. And Restore isn't too bad. You're spending 2 mana to heal for 5. That's a pretty good return on investment. Now, not every character is going to need that heal, so it's an okay spell to be grabbing. I think there's just better spells, but it's not bad. It's not great, though, in my opinion. Oh, we clicked out of here. So if we go to Mystic, Mystic is a very interesting case study, in my opinion. So you get to heal and gain 1 mana. So if you remember, we talk about Student, where we had shield 1 and then gain 1 mana. That's pretty nice because if you get extra pips on here, you get more of both. So you get a great return on investment. And here you get a shield, a heal, and a mana, which is a lot into 1 dice. Now, there is only a 1 in 6 chance you get it for sure. They're very low on mana and very low on healing. So I don't think the Mystic is particularly amazing. It is, however, nice with Gaze, so you can't use this. You don't get this benefit on your turn. But the next turn, you can spend 1 mana and you will get 3 rerolls. Unless you have a curse that reduces this, but this can help mitigate that curse should you get it. And it's not bad. It's not an amazing use of mana, but it's a certain interesting character. I've played a little bit around it. Gaze usually isn't as good as you would like it to be, but certainly isn't a bad character, especially if you're going with just kind of a random team. Gaze can be kind of nice because if you have all of these characters where they're missing sides, they have these big X's over here. It's helpful, and especially if you don't have like a mana outlet, you're not really needing to burst or anything, and you'd really benefit more from the rerolls because that's going to help build more consistency. That's not bad. I don't think they're too bad. Split. Now, all of these are one use. So you're getting a lot of mana in one shot, or you're getting a lot of healing in one shot, and they have decent dice. So each time you use them, they're not as good as they once were because one side is being turned into an X. But like I was saying earlier, any fast-paced team doesn't really care. So, some of these later champions that you get, like the Artificer, they have a lot of one-use sides, but you're doing a lot with each side. So I think this is a fairly comparable character. So their spell is bad. You heal one, shield one. The cleave is kind of nice. Think about getting like an extra shield versus burst, but you only get to use this once a fight, once a combat. And that's what kind of makes it bad, because if you're in a fast-paced sort of combat, I don't know why you'd want to use this. You'd want to kind of like kill things. Murder is the solution. Murder is healing, because if they're dead, they don't deal damage. You do get a lot of value out of that one use, but I've never been in a scenario where I've been like, I'm glad I had this spell. So I wouldn't recommend taking them if you're trying to make for your own team. So if we go over to Gray here, Defender is pretty nice. You only have one blank side. You have a lot of HP to play with. They can tank stuff. And if you want some shields, that's kind of nice for any of the self-harm sides that some of these other characters have. It's not bad. And then you do have a little bit of damage should you need to switch to it. It's only 1 damage, but, the fighter, like we'll see later, has a lot of 1 damage or 2 damage sides. So it's not bad. It's not a bad character. The Buckle is a pretty interesting side. So we're getting into our new keywords here. Heavy, we have to attack the highest HP. It's kind of annoying, should you run into a rats and goblins comp, it has to attack the goblin when you kind of just want to kill the rats so that the goblin runs away. But 2 damage is 2 damage. You don't get that on a lot of sides. There's a strict downside. This does help protect against some bursts. Some of the wolves have a lot of HP, so if you roll this early on, you can just block it, and wolves are kind of hard to kill. So a Buckle isn't that bad, in my opinion. It can really do some sustaining shielding, and the Pristine isn't too hard to keep if you're shielding yourself, because 4 damage is pretty hard to come by early on. At least from single target. If you get a lot of cleaves stacked up on top of that character, it can be harder. Squire, you have no dead sides, which is amazing. I think that's just something to really consider right there. And this redirect can really help because you get 2 shields and you can block something. So, if the Squire's nice and healthy, but your mage is kind of low, they can take the hit and they're getting some shielding. That's fantastic. This is a 1 damage side, but it can be 2 damage should it be followed up. And same thing if you need to shield focus. So that would be 4 shield, which is a lot. You'd be spending 2 dice to save 1 character, but they're going to be really healthy afterwards, which is really good. So I think Squire is actually probably one of the better early Gray people to get. Now, Alloy is a very interesting one. This is the only Gray character to have a mana gain side. They also have an early cleanse, which is really fantastic versus Nyx. Now, this side, shield 1 engage, really only effective turn 1. I don't like it that much. I do, however, really like this shield 1. Like, goblins have that cleave, so you'd be able to protect 2 people to take no damage from that cleave, 2 out of the 3. And this just straight up negates an entire goblin attack, which is kind of nice. Keep everyone healthy. And then Repel it's a very hit or miss, because if they all focus 1 person, this is 1 damage to everyone. That's pretty good. It's a little spread out. You kind of want it concentrated to just pop someone, but it's not bad. You're getting 1 shield out of it and 1 damage minimum. You might be getting more damage out of it, so It's pretty efficient, though there's a lot of variance to go with it, even though there's not variance in the dice. The 4 hit points on the alloy is, if they had a 5th hit point, I would rate them just much better, because they're kind of there to keep the party healthy, and if they get popped, it's kind of annoying. But this cannot be understated. Cleansing can stop poison, which snakes come on fairly early after our first boss. And this can be proactive. So this can be really, really handy. Now with fighters, you kind of get a mixed bag here. You're going to have fairly consistent damage. You're more than likely going to get a damage side with your rerolls. And should you need a shield, they're fine. They're nice and healthy. Brigand, this can kill something. So let's say it goes ahead and it attacks a rat. That would kill it. Now, we would effectively be trading our turn for killing the rat. So the rat doesn't get a next turn because it's dead, and for every other subsequent turn afterwards. But we'd be trading one dice for another dice. And usually games like this, you want some form of an action economy. The side with the most turns is more likely to win. That's generally how it goes. And the way they'll mitigate this in boss fights is they give it a lot of hit points, and it'll do a lot of damage on each of its sides, and it's going to be more reliable. So with Brigand here, it's, if you can just kill something outright with the 3 damage exert, it's really helpful. And no matter what side you get, you're getting damage. And you can get a self-shield as well, which is kind of nice. You're getting 2 stats out of 1, but 1 damage. Chipping stuff away is kind of annoying. I don't like Brigand that much, but there is an appeal to it. No, Ruffian, not a lot of hit points. This just kills himself unless you get some shields on him. Very reckless, but is 0 mana burst. So if you spend 2 2-mana sides, that's 2 dice to deal 5 damage. If you do a shield 2 plus this, that's also 5 damage, but you don't need mana to do it. So this is worse because you can store mana. So this is worse than our Smurf team, but it can be kind of helpful with, you know, some of these bigger gray sides. Like we get this pristine shield for 4. We would only be taking 1 with this because it's paying 5, and we'd be able to hit something really hard. Cleave, very helpful. This can hit backline even though it might not necessarily be available. You know, you hit a rat, which tags an archer. That's really good. Unfortunately, I can't rate this guy to be particularly great. I will mention Eye Patch would remove Pain, which is a fairly low tier item if I recall. It removes all the keywords, so this would just be 5 damage. But you don't want to rely on items. You just want to kind of look at what you get out of a character, because there's a lot of items in the game, especially the lower tier ones, so you're going to get some variance. So just something to keep in mind there. And our last one, you get quite the mixed bag. You're going to get a lot of hit points. 2 damage, single use. Okay, there's not a lot of 2 damage sides in this game. Rampage, if you run into illusions for whatever reason, some of these higher difficulties, you'll get a lot of value out of Rampage. And if you have anything that improves the middle side at all to give it more pips, really good. This is 1 damage, but it can just kill an archer in the back line if they're available, or if this gets ranged. And it can help set up subsequent kills because you'd be doing 2 damage early on, but you have to use this first, so there's a little bit of a restriction. Same sort of issue is here with the wrong one, with the hammer. You know, 2 damage heavy. 2 damage here. You know, everything here is basically set up to do about 2 damage on average. He has a little his HP is actually kind of a detriment here. If he was like 4 HP, it would be easy for him to get this sort of death wish where he could pop, and then you could maybe kill something because of the extra damage. He's an interesting character. I don't particularly like him. It's kind of why I like Fighter and Brigand the best. Yellow is just it feels awkward. Like if all of their sides just did 2 damage, they would almost be too good for a tier 1, but doing 1 makes them kind of like not that valuable, so that's why you kind of need to get like a 2 for 1 where you get an attack and a shield. It's what makes them difficult. Now, speaking of like difficult things to rank, the Dabble doesn't do one thing particularly well, but it does everything. Heal 5, that's just full health for pretty much any target. A shield 2, an extra shield is welcome. Only 1 mana. I mean, if it was 2, this would be a very unbalanced character. I would just say this is the best like tier 1 character, period. Because it would just be too good. 1 mana, it's kind of like half a blank side because pretty much every spell minus a few costs 2 mana. So the first one you don't get anything out of, but the second one you would. So I like to think of it a half a blank side, so it effectively has 1. And then 2 and 1 damage, it's good. Like Dabble, if I ever get a Dabble randomly, I'm never going to be upset. Lost, 3 HP usually isn't too bad to deal with should you have a higher tempo team. If you're going to have to kind of like no one else has any damage to help follow it up so you get the cruel procs to kill stuff. Yeah, I could see that. You're never going to really get these cruel procs off on rats because if they're at 2 HP, you don't get it. And if you get at 1 HP, well, you're already overkilling them. It's kind of helpful if you have like a rat bandit or something because you could 2 damage cruel. That should be in excess of 2, which means the bandit will run away. But I don't think that scenario ever exists. Maybe it does in brutal. The range, it is really helpful because you deal 1 damage and then you poison them. They only have 2 HP to start out with, so that does kill them. They can get more HP if with certain curses, which kind of makes the loss worse in higher difficulties. But they're not bad. They're not good. There's a lot of like niche things it does pretty well. This can really help against the wolves because you can get some extra damage. Like a lot of stuff is just 1 damage, which kind of makes the Lost like a fighter with less HP. A scoundrel, bad, just so bad. It's unreliable. Vulnerable, I will give you, is good. You're only getting 1 out of it, but 1 extra damage per tick. That could lead up to 4 extra damage. That's kind of nice on a boss, but otherwise not that great. And the Clave is obviously good. Thief, I kind of like. So yeah, it's a 50-50 if you're going to get something, but if you do, you're going to get 2 damage. You can just kill an archer, which might save one of your characters. So I actually kind of like Thief. I would not do an all Thief party if I was to do Orange because reliability is a very important thing, and you don't want to do 5 coin flips. So that's that. That's my kind of like analysis on like all these tier 1 units. It's kind of a mixed bag. If there's anything else you'd like to see on this channel, go ahead and hit up in the comment section and we can kind of talk about, or maybe I'll just go ahead and do a video. Feel free to share this to all your Slice and Dice friends. Take care and have a nice day.